All right, Clint from the Doorway too, hanging out with Shane 13 from They Watch Us from the Moon. First of all, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. The new record kind of really is kicking my ass, my friend.
Oh, wow, man. Thank you. I really appreciate having me. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is Lawrence, Kansas. That is not the mecca of metal, as I would call it.
What?
How the hell did this band come to be in Lawrence, Kansas?
Well, I've been a long time member of the local Lawrence metal scene. In fact, I was in a band called Slackjaw back in the early 90s, and Lawrence is famous for punk rock.
Yep.
Because of the outhouse and all that. If you're anybody who's into underground lores and legend, there's a movie out about the outhouse. But Lawrence is known for punk. And I would say in the early 90s, me and about 10 of my friends started the metal scene in Lawrence, Kansas. I say that to kids these days. They're like, crazy, dude. I'm like, no, it wasn't a thing until I was in a band called Slackjaw, and we were probably the first metal band in town, other than a band called Kill Whitey that later became Stick. That got signed in the early 90s. I think they were on Sony or something. I don't remember, but we were the only two metal bands in town for a long, long time that played out anyway. I couldn't tell you of any others really, but so I've been into metal a long time in Lawrence, Kansas. Long time. Been punk rock even longer, but how that came to be from there is in the early 90s, there was three little tiny bands touring the Midwest. One was called Clutch. One was called Caius, and the other one was Sleep. And I saw Sleep in the early 90s open up for Hawkwind at our local venue here downtown called the Bottleneck. That band Slackjaw I was in played with Caius. I couldn't tell you how many times.
Nice.
Because they would come back and forth, East Coast, West Coast, back and forth, up and down, and Lawrence is right in the middle. So tons of bands you would never think would play in this area all played in this area. I saw White Zombie at the Outhouse, for example. Helmet,
Nice.
Body Count, Ice-T at the Outhouse. I mean, people actually played here. So I saw those bands like Sleep and played with Caius. We played with Clutch a whole bunch of times back then. And, the bands I was in then were more, metalcore, hardcore, thrashcore, that kind of stuff. And I remember watching those bands going, this is the wave of the future. Okay. And I remember thinking to myself, it's called desert rock back then. And I remember saying to myself, this is where I'm headed. If the last thing I do is this type of music, then I'll be happy. And that's kind of where I'm at. That's cool. How I came to be with this. It's been a long time coming for a stoner rock band, but I think we nailed it.
No, absolutely. So that's funny because that was one of the questions I was going to talk to you about. Is I kind of love how you mix three distinct styles for this band. Where there's kind of like a melodic poppiness to it. There's that kind of old school doomy desert rock sound, as I was going to call it as well too, being that I'm 50 years old. I played with Caius. I played with Clutch.
Nice.
I was actually born in New York and New Jersey, and they used to play up there all the time. And we would play with them at CBGB's. We would,
nice.
we would play with them at a place called Connections in the Loop Lounge in New Jersey all the time. So and then there's a place called the Brighton Bar where, no lie, my favorite lineup of all time. I was in a band called Soakweed, and it was kind of like a grungy, stonery kind of doomy band. And the bill, and this is way back in the early 90s, was Monster Magnet, Clutch, Nude Swirl, and Us. It was one of the greatest shows I ever played in my life. So
that is awesome.
Yeah. So like I said, I kind of want to talk about this stuff because if I threw a couple of names and bands like that I hear in the music, they shouldn't mix together, but fuck, they sure do, man. Like I don't know how else to say it. Like so, you remind me of like Annika period of The Gathering. You give me a lot of kind of like Heart and Queen elements too, with the way the melodies mix in. And then like I was gonna say Clutch and like Monster Magnet kind of vibes going in. But there's a couple newer bands. Well, they're not really new. I guess they're new because I'm old. But they're newer bands like Matter Mortem from Norway and like Ides of Gemini and things like that. You guys kind of remind me of. But you mix like stoner, psychedelic rock, kind of noisy poppy elements as well too, with that whole sci-fi element. How the hell did this all come about and become this sound?
It all has to do with the talent involved in the band. You know, I mean, really, it's like I said, I mean, I come with that punk rock, old school metal ethos. I also love glam rock. And Ben, our lead guitar player, he's also our producer. He is also a humongozoid fan of glam.
Nice.
So that's the connection there, you know, because we get compared to a lot of stuff as well that wasn't in our mind when we were doing this, right? But that sound developed because of the people in it. We all bring a completely different flavor to the mix. Adrian, our drummer, is more into stuff like Pelican and Torch, things of that nature. Rain, our new bass player, is he's all over the map. He's a total doomer as well, but he also likes, you know, well, he's all kinds of stuff. He's very eclectic in his taste, but he is a doom head. And the ladies in the band come from a completely different arena than what I'm used to anyway. And it's a combination of all those influences and different places we all come from musically that just kind of melted into this brand new thing. And it's hard for bands to say, because all bands want to believe we invented a brand new sound. And boy, I've been around long enough to tell you, chances are you haven't. But,
yeah, right.
And I'm not claiming that we have, other than I'll take that back. I do believe that we have kind of trotted into new territory as far as subgenres go. We've had a lot of people call us doom opera, which I think is pretty cosmic doom opera. I think that's cool. I like that. I've used that term a lot. But you know, all in all, it just has to do with everybody that's in it bringing their flavor, their piece. You know, we all kind of meet in the middle in a few little places. You know, like I said, me and Glam for Ben, you know, we got like a lot of the same heavy type of stuff, you know. He's definitely that Devin Townsend influence that's coming in.
Yeah, you can hear that.
Yeah, that's him. That's one of his favorites. You know, and we did not set out to like incorporate that. That wasn't like a mindset thing. We weren't thinking, oh, this song sounds like that. Wasn't our. It's interesting to us when people tell us, oh man, your music sounds like 10 different things. We're like,
yeah.
Oh,
well, it does.
And that's great. All well and good. To us, it's like, this is what we made up in a basement, you know?
No, that's awesome. So I guess what the next thing I'm going to talk about is why 2 female vocalists. Now, after hearing the record, I love it because they have 2 very distinct vocal patterns, but yet when they blend together, they become very kind of spatial and kind of ethereal sounding.
Yeah.
But why 2 female vocalists, including you doing some vocals as well too? But I'm just saying, why the double female vocalist thing after all?
It just kind of happened. Okay, so there's this R&B cat here in town named Corey Phillips, and he's got a band called Corey Phillips and the Band of Light. And great guy. I've known this dude since we were in our 20s, and I was looking for a female singer that was a singer, not a growler, not a grinder, not a screamer. I wanted an actual singer. And because in the back of my mind, I wanted a female John Garcia.
Okay.
Is what I was thinking. But so I reached out to Corey, and he's like, "Heck yeah, dude! I know a couple of girls that might be interested. Here, call this one and call this one." So Facebook Messenger. So I messaged both of them. Had no idea that they knew each other. But the first one that we had approached was Chelsea, or I approached, and that was Chelsea, and she was like, "Nah, I just had a baby. I've got another 2-year-old here. I have 2 small children. There's no way I can be in a rock and roll band." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." And then went to the second option, which was Lauren. I never met these people before. Talked to her. I said, "Hey, there's this band. We're critically acclaimed, blah, 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 blah. We're looking for a lead singer." And she said, "Yeah, I'll come try out." And she did. And we're like, "Holy smokes, this is awesome." And it turns out that those two have known each other since they were kids and been singing with each other since they were teenagers. They sing in a whole bunch of other different projects together. So like they're very well connected artistically. And Lauren, when she joined, we were like, "Oh, hey, here's all these songs you need to come up with something for in like a couple of weeks." And so she called her friend, and Chelsea came into the mix and started helping Lauren arrange things and get things prepared, because like we needed to have it prepared. She needed some help. So then because we were going into the studio, had time booked and all that, and Lauren's like, "Hey, I'm going to bring my friend in because we've been working on this, and I think it'd be a good addition on the recording to have this harmony." And we're like, "Sure, yeah, go for it." And then that got done, and then Lauren came with Chelsea to practice one time and was like, "She's going to join the band so we can do this." And we're like, "Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that." So it wasn't really a thing that we sought out to do. It was just kind of a natural, this should happen kind of decision.
Cool. No, that's awesome. So I guess I kind of want to talk a little bit about why it took so long for your debut to come, because the band's been around for like 5 years, right? 6 years. Yeah, right.
2018.
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So Cosmic Chronicles Act 1 just came out now, but why and I know you did EPs and singles and stuff throughout it, but like, why did it take so long to get a full record done?
Well, there was this little thing that happened on the planet called the pandemic.
Yeah.
That happened. That was a thing. Honestly, that slowed us down quite a bit. In 2019, we had a huge summer planned. We had all kinds of things we were going to do, invited to do, yada, yada, yada. And that all fell apart, but we were still left with this recording slot that we had booked. And things just kept happening. We had, we'd get exposed, or somebody would get COVID, or we would have family members pass away because of COVID. And that took a large chunk of our time. It took a large chunk of our energy. And there was also this idea that, where are we going to go? What else do we have to do besides work on this flipping record until we think it's perfect? Because up until 9 months or so ago, we were still all in a panic, the whole world. So that played a huge factor in what slowing things down. We'd have to call the guys email the guys at the label when we missed a deadline, like, "Okay, here's what happened. So-and-so's uncle died, grandma passed away, we lost a so-and-so got exposed. There was, 2 of us have got it at the time." There was nothing you could do. So that's why it took so long, man. Just the pandemic.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Don't get me started on the politics of why everything. That's but that's the long and short of it. It's
Nah,
just
that's
the
cool.
pan
You know,
just kicked us right in the teeth, you know.
it happened to a lot of bands. I'm not.
Yeah,
You're not the only one. So,
yeah.
uh, so if the thing I that I think I like the most about They Watch Us from the Moon is the kind of sci-fi infused kind of thinking man's journey that you get with this music.
Yeah.
So like the two videos that I've seen are just they're really unusual and different, and the visuals play a big part in the sound of the band as well too. Can you kind of talk about how you tie the visuals into the actual music that you're creating?
Well, the big thing that we do is we play in costume, and a lot of the costumes have, flashing lights and special effects, and um, we also play to an ambience in our set when we do it
Mhm.
live. There's a lot of uh, what we call interludes, kind of like cinematic interludes in between songs that are either giving plot direction or cues, clues, whatever. And we're developing that more and more. We're starting to develop more bells and whistles for the stage show, but um, that's that whole all of that is that concept, that story will be expressed in a comic book.
Oh,
It's
cool.
going to be available here within a few weeks or so. We're in the last stages of editing it right now. Working with that with a guy named Rick Laura, who's the artist. But yeah, that's where all that comes from. We're a multimedia
Hmm.
entertainment brand, I guess. The videos and the stage show and the recordings, stuff that's going to be in the album are all questions and answers and mysterious plot thickeners.
Cool.
A lot of it comes out with the wheres and whys in a comic book.
Nice. And I think that's where the Devin Townsend thing kind of comes the strongest for you guys is, he did that whole Ziltoid tour and it was a very sci-fi kind of based tour. And I feel like stylistically you're different, but thematically you have kind of the same vibe going on as that, where it's not 100% serious sci-fi, but it is 100% serious sci-fi, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. A lot of when we first started this, a lot of the idea was, like I covered earlier, I've been in a lot of scowling, frowning bands. Like you never smile in a picture,
Yep.
you don't smile on stage, that kind of thing. And I'm old, man. I'm done with that. Like I'm doing this to have a good time. I want to have a good time. So a lot of what we started doing early on was just to take the piss out of like
Yeah.
people that are taking it too seriously. Like you're getting high and listening to music. Calm the fuck down. You know, you don't need to be that aggro all the time about everything. I get it. You slap the title Doom on it and it became something else for a lot of people, but it's not what it was when I first discovered it. You know, it, back in the 90s, that was a very happy and joyous occasion to stand around with your friends, giggling at each other to listen to this band rock out,
Yep.
So that's kind of where that all started. It was just kind of like, I don't want to be that. I want to be something more intriguing and mind provoking, like you
Yeah.
said, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's things yet to come too, man. We're working on puzzles and ciphers, and
Nice.
you solve the cipher, you're gonna win a prize. And I'll give a little hint out there right now. It's gonna surround Nova,
Okay.
so just be on the watch in the future. But um, I mean, it's just supposed to have fun.
Yeah.
That's what
Very
rock and
cool.
roll is all about.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. So I want to talk a little bit about the record itself because what is really intriguing to me is like the radio transmission interludes and like the soundscape interludes that are between the songs. Like, was this always the plan to have these uh like stories within a story on the
Oh
record?
yeah. Oh yeah. There's, I would say, the surface of all these songs and the interludes and the radio transmissions and all that, there's a lot of stuff buried in there. Put on a good set of headphones and dive in, because there's layers and layers of it. But yeah, I mean, all that stuff is meant to offer plot direction and mystery and intrigue. And we really want people to walk away from these songs going, what in the world are they talking about? And start Googling things they hear, because there's a lot of crazy stuff in there. Our ancient history throughout the world on how humans became to be humans is wild and fanciful. Man, every ancient culture has just the absolute harebrainedest things to say about the origins of humanity, and all of that, those backing samples and or the the layered tracks in there, the samples that we've laid in there, and that's what all that's about. There's things in there from Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, because the first chapters of Ezekiel is about a UFO landing, and if you read that with a 21st century mindset, you can clearly see that he is trying to describe something he has no words to describe. And what he saw was a UFO land by a river. And if there's Enochian language in there that is have fun unraveling that little Easter egg, because that stuff's crazy. I would love for people to go and unravel that and come back with us with, oh man, I get it, because it's all part of the mystery.
Very cool. So there's two songs in particular that I think drew me to talking to you today about the band. And I feel like you put them together because they fit together in thematic style, not musical style, but in thematic style. And that's Creeper AD and Return to Earth. It almost feels like those two songs together could be one giant, like 20-minute long song.
Yeah, that's kind of why they're on the same side of the album.
Okay. So can you kind of talk about those two songs, how they came about, and are you happy with the end results of those two songs, the way they mesh together?
Oh yeah, absolutely. All of our songs are meant to, well, the way I see it anyway, everybody in the band probably has a different answer to this, but for me, these songs all lay out in our story. And Creeper AD is about alien abduction. Okay. Return to Earth kind of puts us in about the 3/4 length of our story that'll come out in probably the second or third comic book. But what happens is this band gets abducted, and we are forced to serve an evil entity on the moon. And Return to Earth is about rebellion and escaping that predicament. So yeah, they all go together. All the songs go together. And like what I'm trying to say earlier, for me, this all fits as like operatic movements. These songs are not just songs, they're entire scenes that will eventually play out in either a video or an anime or stage show or something of that nature. So it's all connected within the story. They're all meant to go together. So it's actually Space Angel and Return to Earth are sister songs.
Yep.
Return to Earth is about escaping the moon on a spaceship, and Space Angel is a love song to that spaceship.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just kind of feel like that Creeper AD and Return to Earth kind of thematically flow together. Like it's almost one story. The whole record is thematically, yes, a story, but those two kind of, when I heard them, I had my aha moment, and I was like, okay, this is why I love this band. And those two songs also thematically and musically, if there was anything that I would play for someone first, would be those, because they have a little bit of everything that you do in those two songs.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can dig that. Yeah, I think you're right.
Cool.
They're very. That's all of our stick right
Yeah.
there.
Cool. So let's talk about the label, New Heavy Sounds. I
Yeah,
know very, very goddamn little about the label. I've been kind of looking at them now because of you.
right on.
But how did you come to work with them? And you seem like a fringe band for that kind of label. Like you're not what they would normally release. So how did you start with them? How did you work? How are you working with them? How's everything going so far?
It's great. I think working with them has been fantastic. That came about. I don't want to. I'm very endeared to this person, but I don't want to say his name publicly because he'll be inundated with people trying to get him to do the same thing.
Gotcha.
But we have a industry person that is a critic, and he loved us since the beginning, since we first released Moon Doom. And when I sent him some demos, probably 2 years ago, he was floored. He was like, "Oh my god, this reminds me of Mammoth Weed Wizard Bastard," and which is a European. That's New Heavy Sounds. That's their biggest band to date, I believe. Black Moth, I think, but then Mammoth Weed Wizard is what's making their gravy, you know.
Mhm.
And he's like, "I'm going to talk to Jed and Paul at New Heavy Sounds about you guys," and I was like, "Whoa, okay, uh, yeah, I'm not going to stop you. Go for it." And he came back like a couple days later and was like, "Hey, here's this guy's email. He wants to hear from you." And it was Jed from New Heavy. And then Paul came in the mix right then as well. And or no, maybe it was Paul he sent first. I can't remember. It was one of the
Sure.
two, but um, we sent them demos and they were floored. They're like, "We got to have you," and we're like, "We need to be had." So
Nice.
it works out. Um, we had talked to a few other like smaller independent labels before that, and we were starting to work on contracts with the one that we were holding hands with, and then these guys came along. We were like, yeah, we got to make the right decision for the band, and we jumped all the way on to New Heavy Sounds, and they've been wonderful, man. Incredibly helpful. Their resources just changed the game for us.
Yeah, I can see they're pushing it really heavily. They really do dig the record, so that's cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's humbling.
no, that's what you want.
Yeah.
I kind of have the same kind of circumstances. There's a label in the UK called Aesthetic Death, and I became really good friends with the owner Stu, and we were talking for like over 8 years. And he wanted to release one of my older bands, but we were always working with another record label. And then one day he goes, "Hey, I hear you have another project. Can you send it to me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Not thinking of anything because we've been friends for 8 years. Forget about like just like doing that. And then like 3 months later, I get an email from him going like, "There's no other labels you're going to work with. It's me. You understand that?" And I'm like, "Where did this come from?" I was like, "All right, cool, man."
All
So
right.
yeah, I just released my third record with them actually last week. So like
Nice.
I was like, hell yeah, man. Like, but
Nice.
it feels like the kind of the same way. Like when you can talk to other people when it feels right. You just know to do it. So
Yeah. Yeah. It was time for us, I think. We worked really hard on that record. I mean, Ben, oh my gosh, Ben and Lauren, I would say just, uh, man, they put in a lot of time making sure things were perfect.
nice.
Lauren and Chelsea, particularly with those vocals, that those two, I mean, they changed the game for
Yeah,
that record. I mean, just hands down, you know. But we all put in all kinds of time on it, and I think we're super proud of it. We're glad people like it.
nice. And that's the next thing I was going to kind of talk about is musically, it almost feels like a force more than a band. When you listen to it, you can hear that everybody's doing their own thing, but it blends so well together. And there's so many things in the background that like you don't realize until you listen. Like I've literally listened to the record probably 7 or 8 times now, and I'm still finding like these new weird like synth sounds or tones or like these weird vocal patterns that I'm like, I'm not sure those are vocals or not, but they may be vocals.
They're
Like I'm
all
not,
vocals.
yeah. Like I'm not really sure because they almost sound like twisted moods, like singing and stuff, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
but like, so when you go in and you record the record, did you have the entire storyline down, or did when you went in, did you say like, yeah, let's try this, let's try that? Did you play with the record as it went along as well too?
Musically, it was all pretty much down. We had a weird thing happen. We had to replace a guitar player in the middle of that recording, and that's how we came upon Ben. Ben and I used to play in a band 20 years ago together, and I've known that dude, 20 some years. And our original lead guitar player dipped out right after we recorded the rhythm tracks for this album, and we're like, what do we do? I'm like, well, and I know a guy who can just come in and chomp it. And I called Ben, and lo and behold, he came in and just put it down, man. And
Nice.
And then he was like, yeah, I think I wouldn't mind doing this if you. I was like, well, first I told him, if you want to do this, it's your job. You can have it, But I mean, I don't know. It just all kind of came together in this very ethereal, magical fashion. That kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was looking for. All right, so here's the left of center oddball question that I want to ask just for my personal understanding of this band.
Okay.
So there is a band from the UK that's from the late 80s and 90s, and you said glam rock. Yeah. And I hear it throughout the entire goddamn record, and now maybe I don't feel so insane, but it's Zodiac Mind Warp. And I don't know if you know who that is or don't.
I know who that is.
Okay. Yeah. Like musically and vocally, I know you have female vocals, but the male vocals remind me so much of like the Love Reaction kind of record, like the Sonic Reduced,
wow.
Like that whole period, like where they mixed like punk, glam, sci-fi, and Judas Priest. I don't know how else to kind of explain together. Like, but you have those elements mixed in so much in your music. Are you a fan of that band at all, or is that just kind of a happy little accident?
Happy little accident. I mean, I know who that band is. They're not one of my like. Okay, so Ben and I giggle about the Sweet all the time. Like we've plotted numerous times. Like, if we could do any glam song, like it's always a list of Sweet songs. But I love T-Rex and Mott the Hoople and all that. I mean, I love all that kind of stuff, but the Sweet is like probably my favorite glam band. I couldn't speak for Ben, but we sure do talk about them quite a bit. But no, I mean, and like I said before, like none of this was like an intentional, we want to sound like XYZ. That was not our intention. Was we're going to sound like They Watch Us from the Moon. It just happens to be that this weird magic stew happened, and this is what we got.
Very cool.
None of it wasn't like this song is gonna sound like this. It was just like, hey, I got a jam, check this out, and we just build on there.
Absolutely. So I guess I have a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. But like I said, why They Watch Us from the Moon? Why that name? What reason? There's got to be a deeper meaning behind this.
I'm a weirdo. I think about weird stuff. I do weird stuff. Me and Adrian are the original members. Like everybody, when we started in 2018, he and I and a few other folks started jamming together, but under a different name. And the music we were writing didn't really fit the name. So I came with a list of names on a couple of pages of paper with the idea that I didn't want to pressure anybody or make them think that we were, not what we were or whatever. But I presented as in like, hey, this is a list of names. I think we should name our EP, or what kind of thing jumps out titleage for you on this. And I got to They Watch Us from the Moon. Everybody was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What was that one? They Watch Us from the Moon. That's it. That's what it is. That's what we should call it. I'm like, that's what we should call the band right there. That's what we should call the band. And everybody was like, oh my God, heck yeah, heck yeah. So that's kind of how it happened. But I wanted it to be like we were definitely going more of like a space doom,
Yeah.
Cosmo rock kind of thing. And that's how we ended up with where we're at.
It kind of reminds me of like an unreleased Outer Limits story. Like that's kind of like what it kind of reminds me of. So.
For sure. I mean, I'm a big believer in the name of a band determines the direction of the band. I know that sounds crazy to people that don't play in bands, but that's how I feel about it. And honestly, once we locked into that name, everything just kind of like fell into place.
Nice.
Just as it should be.
Cool. So are you going to be touring with the band? I mean, I know you're all crazy with families, lives, and everything else, or is it going to be just more of kind of regional one-offs or things?
Nah, we're hitting the road. Our June 1st, we play with Haven and Yob at the local venue here, the Bottleneck, and then we go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, play the Whittier Bar the next night, and then we're doing like we call this moon jumper because we're jumping around. Mm-hmm. We're doing a bunch of long weekends basically, so we'll hit Des Moines, Chicago area, and then St. Louis, Nashville, and we're doing Oklahoma City and San Angelo, Texas. We are doing a run to College Station and Lafayette, Louisiana here at the end of the month. So yeah, man, we're getting out there.
How does the band differ live versus in the studio? Now I've seen YouTube videos, but that's never going to show you what a live band is really like. Yeah. How would you say, if I listen to the record and see you live, besides like the theatrical stage stuff, how would you say that the songs are different?
They're heavier.
Okay.
They're more punchy. I mean, live rock and roll is just a different thing, but yeah, there's definitely, you can't capture the entire resonance of a band on a recording. It's impossible. But we are definitely louder, heavier, a little more fuzzy live, I would say. Things are a little bit more flashy. Ben, his leads, man, he can cut heads live. He does all kinds of different things live in our psychedelic spots. So it's kind of an ever evolving thing. Creeper AD, especially those noise spots in there, man. Live, he's just a monster noise machine. It's a lot of fun, but I think that's probably the big difference is we're just louder, heavier, thicker, fuzzier, more in your face for sure. And Lauren and Chelsea are a powerhouse, man. Good night. I can't have Lauren in my monitors when we play on stage because she'll blow out everything. I can't hear drums. I can't hear bass. Can't hear me. Can't hear Ben. But I can't have her in my monitors when we play. And where she's at on stage, I'm right next to her anyway, and she's plenty loud. Right over the instruments and the pound and the grind on stage. She's like a head above volume wise already. So, but yeah, that's probably the major difference right there as well. Is those ladies are just they'll peel your eyeballs back, man.
Nice. So, have you seen any reviews or critiques of the band that have either piqued your interest or said, "Wow, I've never really thought of the band that way before, but maybe they're right."
Yeah, actually, I mean, the funniest one is ABBA with riffs. I we all had this group message. We were like, ABBA was holy smokes, that's hilarious. But yeah, it's just I think Paul from the label kind of first made that comparison, and now somehow it's gotten out into the press, and a lot of people are just ABBA with riffs, ABBA with riffs. We're like, wow, that's bananas. I mean, are honored by it, but it's like that. It's not something we saw coming. Fleetwood Mac comparison too is like, holy smokes, wow, that's
See
nuts.
the Heart and Fleetwood Mac I hear all day long,
I
and the
think,
reason and the reason why is because you got to think about the vocals that you guys have are very much. This is no knock on you. This is actually like homage, like love. Is that very 70s arenas rock kind of vocal style?
I can get down with that, man. I know. In a lot of the doom scene, people want it to be more raw and all that, and I get that, but uh, you know, you can't deny those ladies.
Right.
Just man, they're incredible. You
They
know,
they give me that very Wilson sister Heart vibe. I'm just telling you, like that's
yeah,
what they give. That's what they give me when I hear them sing. So
yeah. I didn't make that comparison until some other people started saying it, but um, when we first started putting the stuff together, we kind of realized it had kind of a Queen vibe to it, and
yeah,
a lot of that stuff. Because those harmonies, especially when you got the male and the female vocals stacked up in like Return to Earth and different things, it's not intentional, but after it was done, it was like, huh, it's like Spirit of Freddie Mercury just kind of hanging around.
yep.
That's cool. That's cool. And that's our first kind of realization that maybe we'd kind of come upon something we didn't really intend to. So, but I think it's
Well,
cool that
well,
people
well,
hear
well,
different things in it. I think it's awesome.
but think about Queen in general, and I'm not going to diatribe too much. They they're probably the most proto desert rock band that there's ever been. Like, listen to like what how they play, how they arrange stuff, and it's all about the groove.
Wow.
It's all about the lock. It's all about the hook, and that's
Yeah.
what desert rock is all about. It's
Yeah.
all about that heavy groove and rock.
Yeah.
If you made Queen a little more fuzzy, they could very well be a desert rock band. Like you have to think
Man, that's heavy, dude. I had never thought of it like that. That's pretty good. I'll give you that. I'll give you
yeah,
that.
and that's where I hear the Queen from is you have that hook, like you have it's that lock and groove, like, and it's not just the bass player and the drummer, it's the guitars, it's the vocals. Like once that groove starts, everybody starts going into that kind of psychedelic
Yeah, man.
groove. So
Yeah.
very cool. Like
Thank you.
yeah, no, absolutely. If there was one thing that you could change about this record now that you've had some time to hear about it, what would it be and why? Just one.
Oh, probably would have written a few songs shorter so we could put another song on the record.
I would cry myself to sleep every night if you did that. The whole reason I love your band is because the songs are as long as they are and you let them breathe. People that want 3-minute songs make me sad inside.
I don't necessarily mean 3-minute songs. I mean, we might have maybe backed one of them up to like an 8-minute song and add another 8-minute song.
Okay, that I'm okay with. But like, when people say I'd rather add extra tracks, because to me right now, Shane, like I wouldn't want this record to change in any way, shape, or form, because what has happened to me is I now have a story that I'm following, and I want to hear the next part of this goddamn twisted story. So,
yes, that's awesome, man. I really appreciate that. That's cool, and it's all supposed to be about a fun story.
mm-hmm.
That's really, we're all sci-fi nerds and comic book kids, and that's kind of the avenue in which we pointed. We kind of got into it, like discussion with the label guys at one point, because they were like, okay, guys, let's kind of talk about the costumes. What do we really? And I kind of had, at least in it, because our label is from the UK, and I had to tell them, like, in America, at least the scenes that I know across the country, comic book kids and metalheads, that's the same guy.
100% the same guy.
Right.
A matter of fact, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to the Dallas Comic-Con. So guess what? Like, yeah,
it's gonna be full of metalheads, isn't it?
Yep.
You're gonna see people there you saw at a show 2 weeks ago, right?
Yep.
Same thing. And it's not just the doomers that are popping on this. Your power metal, Viking metal kids, and not necessarily kids, but people.
Yeah.
They're finding the same kind of thing in us, which I think is awesome. Even though we're not thrashy, we're a different type of heavy, and fantasy has walked hand in hand with heavy metal since it started. I mean, look at Coven, for crying out loud. They invented heavy metal.
We wouldn't have Dio without it. Come on, man. Like,
you wouldn't have any. There wouldn't be anybody like that if there was no fantasy involved in heavy metal. I mean, I think that's just, it goes hand in hand with the people that are into the movement, into the scene, comic books and fantasy and science fiction, and we're all just as big into dragons as we are laser guns,
Absolutely.
And I think people that are finding that within us are, we're all kindred. We're all the same people.
Absolutely. No, I don't disagree at all. Well, so Shane, I'm just going to say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for you talking with me, taking the time to nerd out, talk about non-musical things as much as musical things. Like I said, you come to Dallas, you let me know. I will be there with bells on. We'll hang out. We'll bullshit about sci-fi, nerdy stuff just as much as music. But
awesome, man.
Again, Clint from the doorway too, hanging out with Shane from They Watch Us from the Moon.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Everybody should buy this record, and if they don't, they're fucking fools. That's all I'm going to say.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We would love for you all to buy it. Thank you.
Yeah. You have a good day, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.